enthusiastic crowd was at Abertillery Park to see the Rugby League International between Wales and England in white jerseys.
The steady flow of talent north from the valleys had created a Welsh side good enough to win a triangular tournament, also involving England and France, for 3 successive years between 1936 and 1938. After the war, Huddersfield, St Helens, Warrington and Wigan all played exhibition games in the Principality, a move that helped spark an 8-team league. Here in 1950, Trevor Foster captained Wales against England at Abertillery. England, led incidentally by Trevor's Bradford skipper Ernest Ward, won by 22 points to 4. But the game heralded renewed attempts to launch a fully professional club side in Wales. And the following year, Cardiff were admitted to the RFL at the same time as another new club, Doncaster. Unfortunately, Cardiff lasted just 1 season, and with them, the dream of a strong rugby league presence in Wales vanished for what would be another 30 years.
The final score of 22 points to 4 was certainly, as everybody will agree, a convincing win.
Back amongst the teams in the heartlands, Workington Town were fast emerging as a force to be reckoned with in only their 4th season in the league. By the end of the 1950-51 season, they fought through to the Championship playoff final at Manchester City's Main Road ground, defeating Warrington 26-11.
The first of this year's Rugby League Test, played at Artsell Stadium, Bradford, brought a win for Great Britain.
The visit of the 1951 New Zealand tourists was a major milestone for Rugby League, especially off the field.
Maori in the side, Andy Berryman, led the Kiwis in their war cry. New Zealand kicked off and England in white were soon attacking.
On October the 31st, the Kiwis played Bradford Northern at Odsal in the first properly floodlit game. The significance of this achievement is perhaps best illustrated by the fact that the Football Association wouldn't reach the same level of technological advancement for another 5 years. Here we see the Kiwis back at Odsal for the first test, won by Great Britain by 21 points to 15.
40,000 spectators gathered at Swinton to see the second Rugby League Test match between Great Britain and Australia.
In 1952, Australia were the visitors, and Great Britain confirmed their domination of the world game by taking the Ashes.
After Australia had kicked off, Britain went straight into the attack, and following several attempts to break through, Greenough eventually started the scoring. Keeping on the offensive, Britain went further ahead when Castle dashed over in the far corner. Australia, on the day's showing, were the weaker side. They just couldn't reduce the lead, and naturally Britain weren't letting up. After an Australian infringement, Ward kicked a beautiful penalty. Changing over, Australia made a determined effort to get on level terms. They were awarded a penalty, and Carlson from 40 yards out succeeded in scoring. There's no doubt that Great Britain were in cracking form, and after several near misses, Horn dropped a neat goal. The confident home team went further ahead when Ward got the ball and crossed the line for a great try. Just before full-time, Australia managed to score again, but the final total of 21 points to 5 gave Britain back the Ashes. At the Parc des Princes, Paris, France met England in their final International Rugby League match of the season.
One of Rugby League's most popular tournaments in the 30s, 40s and 50s was the European Championship, made possible by the emergence of France on the international stage in 1935.
Now England went on to the offensive, and following a swift passing movement, Greenough set his teeth and dashed over to open the scoring. Very shortly afterwards, Greenough repeated his success when, fairly scattering the French defence, he put his team still further ahead. France, however, were soon awarded a penalty, which was taken by Puy-Gobert, who certainly made no mistake. Inspired by this, the Frenchman followed up with a very good try by Crisper.
France won the title 4 times. Puy-Gobert, arguably the most famous French player of all time, is seen here popping over the goals in France's narrow 13-15 defeat in Paris during the 1952-53 season.
In the second half, they improved their position when Cracknell, not finding very much opposition, managed to place the ball between the posts. Towards the end, Puy-Gobert rounded off this hard-fought match splendidly by scoring 2 more penalties for France and dropping a fine goal. But England won with a narrow margin of 15 points to 13.
Back in England, the 1954 Challenge Cup final saw Halifax clash with Warrington.
Wembley's Empire Stadium was packed for the Rugby League Challenge Cup final tie, and here come Halifax and Warrington to settle the issue. The teams were presented to Lord Derby. First Halifax wearing ring jerseys, now Warrington. Halifax kicked off, and as the cup final got going, supporters roared encouragement from the stands. The first goal came after a quarter of an hour when fullback Griffiths kicked a goal for Halifax. The match continued at high pressure, but close marking made it impossible for either side to break through. Within 10 minutes, Halifax added 2 points to their score with another good kick by Griffiths. So the crowd saw Warrington cross over 4 points behind, but now they kicked off in the second half, determined to close the gap. After 10 minutes of hefty give and take, a Halifax infringement gave Warrington a chance, and Bath took it, 2-4. Halifax came back strongly and on at least one occasion looked like scoring, but Bevan saved the situation for Warrington. 15 minutes later, Bath kicked the equaliser, and so for the first time since the Rugby League Cup final has been played at Wembley, the result was a draw with a replay to follow.
After the deadlock at Wembley, Bradford's Odsal Stadium was chosen for the replay, a game which would go down in history.
Over 102,000 spectators filled the Odsal Stadium at Bradford, the largest number ever recorded at a Rugby League Cup final. After a draw at Wembley, Warrington and Halifax had returned to the north to resume the contest. Halifax, wearing striped jerseys, kicked off and the replay was on. The Warrington forwards began with some fast, open passing and soon began to threaten the Halifax defence. After only 8 minutes of play, they took the lead when Jim Challoner dashed over the line for the first try. Halifax started to retaliate, but they were prevented from scoring by very sturdy defence. Warrington indeed were playing splendid football, even better than at Wembley. However, things looked better for Halifax 20 minutes later when they were awarded a penalty inside the Warrington 25. Griffiths took the kick. Half-time and the score 3-2. Warrington opened up the game again with some very fast passing movements which looked pretty dangerous and in fact almost resulted in some additional points. But the scoring didn't start again until 60 minutes after the interval. Then Harry Bath landed a superb goal from 35 yards to increase the lead. Just 4 minutes later, McCormick obstructed Daniels, the Halifax wing 3Q. Griffiths again took the kick. At this stage, Warrington were only 1 point ahead. 7 minutes later, Jerry Helm, the Warrington scrum half, took a pass near the halfway line. After a splendid run, he got the try that guaranteed victory. With the final score 8-4, the crowd poured onto the field to congratulate the players on a first-rate final.
With the game on a high following that huge world record crowd, Great Britain headed down under for the 1954 Ashes series.
The English and Australian teams were presented to Governor-General Sir William Slim before their big match at Sydney. A colleague gives us his report.
Australia in dark jerseys kick off and the ball moves smartly into play. Big men and speedy, it's an international battle of the giants. Brilliant halfback Holman contests the scrum with Englishman Helm. Handling well, the Aussies are on the attack from the start. Paul crashes through the English defence, passes to Proven, who... Captain Clive Churchill seen in slow motion as he short kicks and follows on. Star Welshman Lou Jones gathers the ball, cleverly fends off Churchill's attack and kicks upfield. A crowd of over 65,000 sees Australia piling up points. Hard tackling is a feature of the game. Churchill comes to the aid of Englishman Lock forward trail with an injured rib. Now England fights back as the three-quarter line swings into action. Helm runs across field and passes to Jones, who gets clear of Crocker, but runs into a storm centre when Churchill brings him to earth with a solid tackle. It's enough to make you swallow your dentures as England presses desperately to make up leeway. Now Silcock breaks away and makes a dash for the line. A brilliant run for a heavy forward that just outpaces the opposition. In the second half, clever work by Helm and a beautiful dummy by Ashcroft, who loses the ball when tackled. O'Shea picks up the loose ball and starts a movement that takes Australia over the line again. Final score is 37-12. Victory for Australia in the first test.
Britain levelled the series in Brisbane and went back to Sydney for the decider.
Australia, in dark jerseys, kick off in the third and decisive test at Sydney Cricket Ground. In spite of muddy conditions, the British team are going well, but a crash tackle from Watson slows the advance. England wins the scrum, and Jackson fends off Churchill before getting a pass away to winger O'Grady. O'Grady passes inside, Ashcroft takes it well, and it's first blood to Great Britain. The Aussies break away now, and centre-half Harry Wells gets the ball out to Watson, who just beats the opposition to score right under the posts. And now for that disputed try. Either Wells made a double movement or he was forced over by a heavy tackle. Anyhow, it was allowed by the ref. Next, a smart move by Piddington, but he just fails to score. Once again, Wells bursts through and Piddington scores, giving the Ashes to Australia by 20 points to 16. Good, clean game, but you'd never think it, looking at Williams, the British captain.
Britain didn't have long to dwell on their Ashes loss. 1954 was also the year of the inaugural World Cup in France.
The French are a formidable team, and their passing movements were a strong challenge to the British pack. Altogether, France knocked up 3 penalties, all beautifully taken by Aubert. But clever British tactics received their reward in a fine sequence of scoring. This electrifying display brought the opposition back in an effort to equalize before the interval. Here's another French penalty. But Britain were 4 points ahead at half-time. The heady French pack was a powerful adversary, and Britain didn't have it all their own way, as you can see. But these setbacks only urged the British on to greater efforts. During the match, they landed 2 penalty goals thanks to Ledyard's accurate kicking. Although France increased their score to 12 points, their performance was completely overshadowed. Champions of the world by 16 points to 12. What a day for the team and their captain, David Valentine.
2 years later, Britain regained the Ashes to add to their World Championship crown.
Great Britain, in white, met the Australian tourists at Swinton in Lancashire for the 3rd Rugby League Test. Determined to atone for that severe defeat at Bradford 2 weeks before, we drew first blood when Little broke through and went over. Davis converted. A victory now would recover the Ashes which we lost in Australia in 1954. We made 3 tries in the second half. This is Sullivan's. A triumphant total of 19 points to Australia's 0, with Boston of Wigan completing the scoring sequence.
Britain relinquished the World Cup to Australia in 1957, but the following year returned down under for another Ashes series. They lost the opener in Sydney and 3 weeks later travelled to Queensland for what would become perhaps the most famous of all Ashes tests, the Battle of Brisbane. Just 3 minutes into the game, Lions captain Alan Prescott broke an arm. Prescott played on for the whole game, his right arm dangling at his side in one of the greatest displays of courage in the history of sport. Inspired by Prescott, several of his teammates also played through the pain barrier. Jim Challoner injured a shoulder, Vince Corelius could hardly walk because of a back injury, Eric Fraser fractured an elbow. In a display of endurance, downright determination and sheer courage, against all odds, Britain won 25-18. Once again, the series came down to the 3rd and final game.
Shake hands, friend. In a moment, we'll be at war. It's the 3rd and decisive Rugby League Test at Sydney. That's a near thing. Great Britain opens well with a movement that foxes the Australians, and Ike Southward goes pounding over. Number 2 was the same sort of thing. This time it was Albert Terry flinging himself across. Australia reply in the same sort of fashion. Provan goes through. Not long afterwards, Holmes followed the example, but Australia were behind on points. It was really worrying for the crowd when we opened up in the second half. A dazzling sequence of scoring which brought our total up to 40 points against Australia's 17. So Britain wins the cup with the highest score ever recorded in the Anglo-Australian series.
But less than a year later, the Ashes were being fought for once again. Britain lost the opener at Swinton, but levelled the series at Headingley.
First minute, Don Robinson of Leeds went over for a try. Local boy makes good. Neil Fox failed with the kick. After the Kangaroos had replied with a penalty 10 minutes later, Great Britain got cracking again, their second try coming from Fox. Britain leading 6-2 in the second half, the fog getting thicker and this rugby league battle even fiercer. Australia now came back with a vengeance, an impressive movement finishing up with Brian Carlson scoring a try. He himself converted, putting his side 1 point ahead. 2 minutes later, Gasnier found an opening and sent Carlson over 10-6 to Australia. It was touch and go for Great Britain, who lost the first test, but they did succeed in winning by 1 point thanks to a final converted try.
A young player who made his Ashes debut in that Headingley test was Neil Fox.
Very vivid memories, really, because it was my first series and it was the last time that we won the series in England, which is now 40 years ago. So the first game I played in, was at Headingley, and then we won that match. I was picked for the third one, which was in Wigan Central Park, and luckily we won that and came away with the Ashes win.
This is Great Britain on the ascendancy here at the moment.
Having retained the Ashes, Britain set about winning the 1960 World Cup, and in the final at Odsal, once again wrestled the title from Australia.
And it's Eric Turner having a go. 3 yards short. Can the Australians hold out on this one? It's a lot of bat playing the ball. Brian Shaw, Corellis a long one, and it's to Boston, and Boston is one to beat, and Boston's into the corner for a try, the first try of the match. There is Philip Boston, and the crowd all very excited. The first try for Great Britain scored by Philip Boston. A dig, Corellis. Inside to Murphy. Murphy going nicely away, looking for Sullivan. Sullivan takes it. Sullivan was going in the corner. Sullivan's into the corner, and it's a great round by Sullivan. The Australians, Tony Brown. And Tony Brown breaking away. Yes, Tony Brown. He's looking for Harry Wells. He's looking for Carlson. He's giving it to Carlson. Carlson's into the corner. Carlson's in for the first try. And a very, very good try indeed made by Tony Brown. Well, it's Great Britain in attacking position. 25 yards out. They've got 7 points lead, 10 points to 3. And left for play, according to our watch, is a couple of minutes. And it's time. It's less than a minute. So it's time, and Great Britain win the World Cup, taking it from Australia, the holders, after winning this rather sensational match by 10 points to 3.
At Wembley in 1960, 21-year-old Neil Fox, now an established star of the game, set a new point-scoring record for a Challenge Cup final, with 20 in Wakefield's 38-5 demolition of Hull.
Inside went to Neil Fox. Neil Fox is strong enough to score in the corner, and he scores in the corner. Wilkinson, Turner jumping, and Turner, it's a pass to Alan Skeen for his second try, right behind the post. There goes Skeen in all his glory, 2 tries. What a magnificent afternoon for this ex-Springbok rugby union player, 50 times cap for Western Province. Neil Fox, easy conversion kick for Neil. And he kicks it, 23 points to 5 for Wakefield. Whiteley breaking away, looking inside, but he's lost the ball, and Round is there to take the cover. And Round is running nicely. He's got Neil Fox inside him. What can Neil Fox do? Neil Fox is going over for a try. Nobody will catch him, but it will be too late if they do. Round behind the post for a grand try to Neil Fox. Simple as that. Easy kick, left leg, and the flags are up. Wakefield on the attack, wanting to get this final try for the completion, and here comes the final try to scrum half. Keith Holliday goes near enough to behind the post for Fox. Chance of a go. 36-5 for 38. Yes, very easy, good goal. 38 points to 5. And what? And it's the time. Time has gone, and Wakefield have won the Rugby League Cup by 38 points to Hull's 5.
I got a record which has just been equalled, 20 points, which was 7 goals and 2 tries, and a try then was 3 points, where it's 4 points now, so I would have had another couple of points had I been playing today. But yeah, the first Wembley final and breaking the record was a nice achievement, and very proud to be associated with Wakefield Trinity at that particular time.
The game was booming in the early 60s. As well as Neil Fox, other legendary figures such as Billy Boston and Alex Murphy were emerging. Here we see Boston and Murphy both scoring against the 1961 Kiwis at Headingley.
Great Britain had started as favourites against the untried Kiwis, and they seemed to be into their stride when Boston went over for a try. Rhodes converted. This may have looked like a pointer to the result. Certainly it wasn't long before Great Britain scored again. This time a try by Murphy. Great Britain leading 8-2. The visitors, however, soon began to reverse the situation. After scoring another penalty, New Zealander Edwards made it 7-8 with a try. Conversion plus another converted try sent New Zealand into the second half leading 14-8. A try by Reedy put the Kiwis further ahead. Fagan converted. Great Britain weren't finished yet, and there were plenty of tough exchanges as the battle raged. Just watch them as they bludgeon their way towards the Kiwi line. The home 13 were awarded when Boston went over for his second try. To many people's surprise, however, New Zealand were right on top, and two more tries, both converted, resulted in their great victory, 29-11.
Another great name of that era was Tom van Vollenhoven, who starred in the 1961 Cup final for St Helens against Wigan.
Vollenhoven can ride, the point has been chased by Ashton. Can Rod get it? Rod gets to give it to Vollenhoven, and Vollenhoven's in behind the post for a sensational try.
But Wakefield were undoubtedly the team of the moment, with further Challenge Cup final victories over Huddersfield and Wigan in 1962 and 63.
Chance for Hurst. Hurst away, he's got one man to beat. If he beats him, he's in. If not, he's got to beat. He's in. He's in for the try, yes. And obviously, Wakefield are going to be worried without Derek Turner. Away go. Oh, well, Wakefield is hurt. He's got one man to beat. He does. Oh, he does. Fox is going in. He's driving in the corner. He scored. He scored. Holiday. And still the ball is being moved in. Fox is going to have a drop. Fox is going to have a drop. Goal. A number of times Wakefield must have dropped the ball in possession. Both done. Now this is... Oh, it's an interception! It's a sensational try by Poynton! An interception! What a sensational try! There he is. It's 10 minutes to go. Had a very good game, Poynton. Turner. Spearman. Fights it in for a try. Brooks going to score under the post. This young lad's got a try. And he sidestepped round the photographers, and it is time, according to our reckoning. And into the stand with a vengeance that goes for his 2 points. A joyous moment for Derek Turner. Tough, solid forward. And there's his club chairman on the left, Steve Martin Montgomery, to present the cup. And what about it, Derek? One for us, one for all those boys.
Tremendous career at Wakefield. Played there about 15, 16 seasons. So I've got a lot of feeling for the club, although later years I did go to other clubs to help out, basically. But my heart's always been at Wakefield, and the team then was a tremendous team, and that was the start of Wakefield Trinity getting on the world map, because we were that successful at that particular time in the early 60s.
Widnes took the 1964 final, the first time that substitutes had been allowed.
Not enough on, said the referee. Overlap, Frank Myler. And I say that with a bit of noise in my voice because it's always dangerous, 15 yards out. He's in on it, amazing for a try! Frank Myler, the big, burly, buffable lad, in for a try that finishes the match. Frank Vintic Aurelius, the skipper with the cup and the special handshake from his chairman Frank Devenold, and there's the cup he promised us. There's his cousin and vice-captain Frank Myler. What a good looking lad, nice cup too, isn't it?